to avoid that as well.
I don't even know how to do that.
It'll be going live in like probably 10 seconds.
Oops, sorry.
Let's get it all out now. Here we go. We are live now.
Wait, hold on. This is about to hopefully. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Black Kids White Coats YouTube channel. This is really exciting because this is like we're coming to the end of this match series. Today we're going to be having anesthesiology. Oops. Are we hearing anything? So we're starting with anesthesiology today. And my name is Lillian. I'm a rising M4, and I'm going to let my co-host introduce himself.
What's up, everyone? My name is Nelson. I'm one of the co-hosts. I'll be going into radiology.
Yeah, so today we have some lovely Black girl magic. I love it. I was just like looking at this like, oh my gosh, like,
it's awesome. I love it.
Amazing. So I'm just gonna go through their names and then we're gonna get started. So we have Ellen, she's going to the University of Pennsylvania. We have Ornella going to the Medical College of South Carolina. Darian, who is going to the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, and Abby going to the Montefiore Medical Center / Albert Einstein College of Medicine. So we're really excited to have all of you guys here. Thank you guys for the opportunity and like, thank you for sharing your stories and all of that good stuff. And as always, we're grateful to the healthcare professionals that are still fighting and still going through this time. So stay safe, y'all. Wash your hands and stay safe. So we're just gonna get started. So I think the way we'll do it for this first one is alphabetical order. So in terms of your first name, Abby, we'll have you kind of share. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, a quick intro, your story through before medical school and into medical school, how you got interested in medicine and all of that good stuff.
Okay, so my name is Abby. I'm from the East Coast, mainly New Jersey, New York area. I kind of always knew that I was interested in medicine / like public health. So I went to Rutgers, New Brunswick for undergrad, and then I ended up going to Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School for medical school. In undergrad, I majored in public health and I took an interest in health disparities. So I always knew I wanted to be in an underserved area, which is why I ended up going to medical school in Newark. And I guess, so when I was looking for a specialty, I wanted to be in something that allowed me to advocate for my patients, allowed me to, I wanted it to be a cerebral specialty as well as procedural. So that kind of like looking at everything and going through third year, I kept an open mind, but I ended up going into anesthesia for those reasons. So I'll be going to Montefiore in the Bronx. And that's a little about me.
Cool. Alan?
So I'm originally from New York. I'm home for med school, currently sitting at home. I didn't know I always wanted to go into human medicine. Both of my parents are OBGYN, so I saw kind of how hard the life is. I thought I wanted to be a vet, so I went to the University of Maryland for undergrad. They have a very strong animal science program. Figured out it wasn't for me, so I was like, okay, fine. I'll go back to human medicine. I went the non-traditional route. I took 2 years off after med school, kind of exploring other routes, clinical research, research and development. And, you know, during that time, my boss was like, you should really just go to med school. So I was like, okay. And I applied to med school. And as far as choosing anesthesia, I didn't know anything about anesthesia before coming into med school. I connected with my mentor pretty early on in first year and just kind of followed her around, kind of weighed it against what I was experiencing with her, against everything else I experienced in med school. And at the end of the day, came to the decision that this was the right specialty for me.
Darian?
Okay. Hi, everyone. I am originally from Nigeria. I was born there and raised there. I went to University of Pennsylvania for undergrad, where I majored in sociology and African studies. I've always been interested in like the social determinants of health and public health issues as a whole. I ended up being a non-traditional as well. I worked for 2 years in research. And then after those 2 years, I did a 1-year post-bac before starting at Ohio State from med school. Coming into Ohio State, I I wasn't even interested in anesthesia at all. I thought something surgical. I've always loved working with my hands, and I always envisioned myself in the operating room environment. And I also had mentors in surgery, all facets from OB-GYN to ortho to general surgery. But during my third year, I was in my cardiac surgery rotation actually, and that particular rotation is what sparked my interest in anesthesia. I got to work with various cardiac anesthesiologists. They were just more engaging and hands-on, and I just appreciated how they would walk me through the physiology of what exactly was going on with our cases. And I love that they were able to get hands-on, do procedures at the same time. And after that rotation, I was like, I think anesthesia might be it. And I waited till my OB-GYN rotation to finally confirm that anesthesiology is what I wanted to do.
Well, hello everybody. So I'm also originally from Nigeria, but I was raised in Italy, so in central Italy. So I actually came to the US in 2011 after high school. And then when I came here, I did undergrad in South Atlanta, kind of 45 minutes out of Atlanta. It's called Gordon State College. It's a small school. And then following that, I did a summer, it's called the C program. I did that program, and that's when I was like, oh my God, I need to take an MCAT, and I was definitely not ready for that. And so that because of that, I ended up taking like a year off, but still I wanted to do something meaningful. And I've always been passionate about teaching, mentorship, leadership. Those are my three biggies. And so I took a job as a high school teacher for that year while I was studying for the MCAT. And then I got into med school. So I'll say my route is definitely non-traditional. I started college when I was 21, when most people probably graduate. And as far as getting into anesthesia, my school offers pretty much an employment opportunity for med student, is like an anesthesiology externship. And so first year came, I applied for that externship. And so I was pretty much working as an anesthesia tech all through med school till like just a week before match. And so that's how I personally dived into anesthesia. Like I was working with a resident, I was doing 24-hour shift on a weekend with them, working with the attendants. So I had the chance to ask a lot of questions and see if I actually like doing what they're doing. And by second year, I was convinced that that's what I wanted to do. So.
Awesome, thank you guys. And just to kind of expand on what you kind of brought up, Ornella, can you guys talk about exposure to anesthesiology and kind of like where you are right now, looking back, pre-med, M1s, M2s, what would you recommend to them to get that early exposure? I don't know, like for me personally, I still haven't been exposed to anesthesiology as much as I would like to, but for the most part, people probably get exposed to an M3 year, which, I mean, it's never really too late, but if it's something that you're considering, what would you guys recommend with the resources that you know of to get exposure to the field?
So my personality, I'm a go-getter. So if I want something, I go seeking for it. And what I did is just, even after I got the position, technically that was just me working, but I still used the opportunity to be in people's face. And I went to faculty and be like, hey, are you working on something? Like actually, my mentor, she's my mentor now, but at the time she was the program director and I had no clue, but she was Ghanaian, she was a Black female. So immediately I was just drawn towards her. I started asking her, are you working on something? Can I do research with you? I asked her why she chose anesthesia. So I just started to ask questions to the people that are, in anesthesia. And I did the same with all the specialty as well. Like, that I thought like emergency medicine at some point, it was something I was considering. So I just did the same thing. And if you actually ask people, if you can shadow them, if you can come a few hours on a weekend, if they have any research going on, I think those are the straightforward route to get to where you want to be. And if you can do that early on in your first year, even if you're not sure yet what specialty, but I think, you can identify at least, okay, I'm a cutter, I'm not a cutter. Like you can identify at least the areas that you're interested in. And then you start inquiring about those, you start talking to those people, you start networking among those people. I think that's the easiest and direct way. And it's not like the struggle that you have before getting into med school. Once you're in med school, it's way easier to shadow, it's way easier to like, you know, be in the hospital. Before that, I would say undergrad is more challenging and you really need to like, you know, be bold. But I think once you're in med school, shadowing, research, going to conferences, things like that are fairly like easy. I don't know, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. I think being proactive, reaching out to people. I think anesthesiologists in general are very laid back. So, you know, if you reach out to someone and say, hey, can I join you in the OR on XYZ day? They'll be like, sure. And, you know, you're in right there. I think research is also a very good way. A lot of people are kind of looking for that free help on their research projects. So early on in med school, you know, when you have that first year of summer, getting involved in an anesthesia project, if it's something that you're interested in, is probably a good way to get your foot in the door as well.
No, I definitely agree with what they've both said regarding early exposure. I know for me during first year, second half of first year and like the summer, I did a lot of shadowing in different specialties, particularly surgical specialties. And for me, sometimes choosing your specialty can be a process of discovery. I know there are some people who come into med school, they're like, this is what I want to do. And this is what they end up sticking with, you know, for the all 4 years. For some people, it's like you mentioned, Ronella, it's a process of, do I want to be a cutter? Do I like being in the OR? Do I prefer a long patient, you know, continuity? Those things it can be hard to tease out very early on without getting exposure. And in looking for people to shadow, I would honestly look at my med schools, like different departments, see if I found a minority face, a Black person, Black resident, and email them, or a Black attending. Or if there wasn't, I'll just reach out to someone who looked like they were a friendly face and just mention I'm a first year, second year med student, interested in the specialties. Is it okay if I can shadow you? And most times they were responsive and would say, you know, what is your schedule? Like, here's when you can come, that sort of thing. And then in deciding on anesthesia mentors, like I mentioned, I didn't decide on anesthesia until my third year. But once I did realize that this is something I wanted to do, I definitely mentioned it to someone who I felt who could mentor me in that particular specialty, and also reached out to like my program director to show face that, hey, I'm a third year and I've just become interested in anesthesia, and you know, I would love to get some insight into what I should be doing, what I can do to make myself more competitive. So I think just exposure, putting yourself out there. Don't be nervous about shooting an email to you know, a cold email to a random attending or a random resident, because you never know where it'll take you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what everyone else said about being proactive and putting yourself out there. In terms of pre-meds that are looking to get exposure to anesthesia, something I did when before med school and undergrad, I did a summer program called SMDEP. I think now it's called Summer Health Professions Education Program. So in doing that, they do allow you to get in contact with physicians and be able to shadow in different specialties that you may be interested in. So for me, I was able to get early exposure to anesthesia and actually get mentors early on before I even got into medical school, even though like I didn't know, of course, that anesthesia was what I was going to go into, but just like being able to see things early and have it on your radar. So, you know, once you get to medical school to reach out and make those connections, I thought it was really helpful.
Shout out to SMDP. I did that too. Yeah.
One thing I will add is I remember one of my the people I'm mentoring, she was telling me, oh, you know, I did that, but they didn't respond to my email. I was like, no, it doesn't work like that. Be persistent. Mm-hmm. Like my experience so far, I can tell you, like, yes, 99% of the time they will not respond to that first email. So if you're not getting an email back, go to their office. They're somewhere on campus. If they're not in their office, there's going to be some secretary. There's going to be somebody there in the administrative that's going to be like, hey, so student came by, you know, and then when they see that you're persistent, they're actually not want to come work with you because, oh, okay, this student is just not, like, just didn't expect me to respond after one email, you know, and most of the time they'll respond, but don't let the fact that they're not responding back to your email be like, you know, you just let it go and not keep going with it. So,
right.
Awesome.
And I would just add to that, in terms of like reaching out to people and them not emailing back, I think even having mentors that are not in that specific field that you're interested in, they can help you with that. So you may be reaching out to someone in anesthesia, but they may have went to med school or trained with, or just like is friends with someone that's your mentor now. So just like letting your mentor know, like, hey, I've been reaching out to so-and-so in anesthesia, and they're like, oh, let me text them right now for you. Like those connections can help too.
Yeah, thank you guys. I mean, we're flowing right into the next segment. Can you guys expand on mentorship and what that has looked like for you through your journey? Is it important in anesthesiology? Like, can you just kind of make some comments about that?
I mean, I think mentorship is important in any field. For me, again, it was just like a one day in first year where they had like a list of as faculty that were from different fields. And I was like, okay, I know nothing about anesthesia. So let me go talk to this lady. Like she's here, so why not? And, connected with her. And then over the years, keeping up with your mentors is important as a mentee. It's kind of a two-way relationship in that they're not going to check up on you. You have to give them updates on what's going on, anything you need help with. And then, like, what am I trying to say here? There's a difference between a mentor and a sponsor. And for me, my mentor happened to be both. But a sponsor is someone who can really leverage their relationships to, get you to where you want to be. So in my instance, my mentor had attended the University of Pennsylvania, had a very good relationship with the chair of the department. And I used that to my advantage. I was like, hey, when it came to after interviews and, before our rank lists were due, I'm like, hey, can you just send him an email, let him know that this is my number one, like, and she did. So, having those relationships is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
I agree totally. And it's important throughout the whole journey from undergrad to the day you match, because I found like during college, I had certain type of mentors that I still, I'm still in contact with, but right now they cannot really mentor me on where I am at this point. And that even the first 2 years of med school, I had a different set of mentors. And then, when I start getting to anesthesia, then I got a different, I consider a career, professional, like actual mentors. So I feel like you're going to have mentors at different stages based on your need. One thing I'll say is never assume, always ask. That's how I end up finding my mentors. Like if I wasn't unsure about something, I've always, reach out to people that I know, okay, you've done this before me. And like I have residents that are mentors. Like I remember when it was a year before applying for residency, just like, we all did. When there was that slow, that moment of, visiting, all that application part, I was so confused. And I said, before I even do any damage, because this is a one-time process, that's how I want it to be, let me reach out to people that have done this way before me. And in fact, that was so helpful because now I find myself, they were telling me, hey, I did this, don't do it. I did this, don't do it. Like, they were giving me suggestion on how to be as, successful as possible. So every time you find yourself, in my opinion, doubting your next step, or you're not really sure, just have somebody, whether it's a resident, whether it's a faculty member, just don't like, oh, I'm gonna just do it. Because most likely, I feel like this is kind of a one-way shot. Like if you mess up, you have to wait a whole year, to do things. So I think if you're in doubt, just ask,
Awesome, thank you guys. And I guess we can shift the conversation a little bit to talk about getting through medical school and life in general. So are there any like low points or disappointments that you guys have faced along your journey? Did you get to overcome it, or maybe like just some in terms of inspiration for other people? Are there certain points in time where you found yourself at a low point in time?
I can expand on that. So
or something, some difficult achievement.
So I would say for me, and I'm not the only one, standardized testing has just not been my forte. And I think before even starting med school, I identified that. I was like, you know what? I know my weaknesses, I know my strength, and I laid them on the table, honest with myself. So like what I did is try to focus on all my strengths. So going to med school, I was looking for leadership opportunity. I was looking for all the things I'm good at, mentorship or different roles in the job, like externship. Because I know, if step one comes and I'm struggling like the MCAT, I want my application to speak for itself without like the score being like the most important thing of my application. And that's actually worked out for me because step one time comes, of course I struggle. Like, you know, it was just a struggle. I think at that moment during step one, I was reconsidering my whole life. I was like, my God, what am I doing? Why am I even doing this? Like, dude, am I even gonna pass this test? Like, it was a whole dilemma. It was emotionally, mentally, it was just a whole mess. To the point that I'll disclose, I actually take an extra month to study for step one. I didn't take it, like I ended up taking it July 20th, which I had my classmate already on rotation, you know, got in their step score back, celebrating, and I'm still over here like studying. But ultimately what I did is just, you know, you just have to rearrange your game plan. And at that point, I just wanted to take it, pass it, you know, I just wanted to move on with it. And I got my score back, I survived. You know, it wasn't, I'll tell you, it was below average. It wasn't any like, you know, 250 score, no. But because I already knew myself and already had a game plan, it didn't damage me as much, to the point that when interview season come, I was surprised, like, oh, okay, some people are calling me for interviews. So I think if you just have to know yourself. If you know something is really not your forte, focus on the positive. I'm always focused on the positive, focus on the things you know how to do well, you know, and try to just make sure you survive, you know, because we still have to take step one, you still have to pass it, but just make sure you were able to at least overcome it, you know, but don't, at the end of it, I'll say, looking back, man, don't stress, like just overcome it, do the best you can. I mean, you know, and things are still going to happen if you are still proactive and trying to, you know, work on other things.
I definitely had a similar experience, Ornella. Same thing. Step one was definitely a very challenging time. And I think what did help for sure is making myself a well-rounded applicant. So I did have multiple leadership roles. I did have a lot of community service experience. And those were very good talking points in my interviews itself. But prior to actually submitting my application, I did have a challenge. I, you know, went into fourth year, you know, knowing, okay, step one wasn't as good, you know, it was below average. Similarly, I'm going to do better for step two. And my step two score was great. It did really well on that. And, you know, went into fourth year, you know, ready to attack, you know, honor the first two rotations, took step two CS. My step two CS comes out, I think it was like September 5th, and we submit our applications for ERAS September 15th. And I found out that I failed step two CS. And that was just a big blow, because I was like, you know, I have all my ducks in a row. Step two CK, I beasted it. You know, out of my first two rotations of fourth year, and I just had this big, you know, huge curveball going into my application season. And because the reports had come out, before September 15, it was going to be on my ERAS, so there was literally nothing I could do. It was just going to show that, you know, I didn't pass step two CS. So that was something that was very stressful going into the interview season, and being worried about that and how that would come up in interviews and all that. And it was very, very concerning. But ultimately, you know, I was reminded by my mentors and my husband that, you know, I have so much more to offer than just the step two CS score, and everything besides that, like, just was glowing. So going into my interviews, definitely having confidence. And honestly, none of the places I interviewed at brought it up except for my home program, who were like, what happened there? So that was, I would say that was a big curveball. And I would say that when you do encounter those situations where, you know, you feel like you gave your all and then you get thrown a curveball, you can't let it get you down. You have to keep reminding yourself of, you know, you've worked hard to get here, and this one thing won't be the deterrent that, you know, keeps you from your dreams. So that was, you know, it was a challenging time, but obviously the interview cycle went well and matched. Even with, I took step two CS in December of fourth year and got my score January, and it went well. Yeah.
Wow, Darren, thank you so much for your candor and sharing that. And funny enough, I had the very same experience. I've been really trying to wrestle with how to tell people this, you know, and how to come out with it. But yeah, it was just damn near like a depressive state when you got that result back. And then you're kind of like, you look left and you look right, all your other classmates like, well, they passed. Like, what's wrong with me? I did all this extra stuff. I did my due diligence. Like, what the heck?
Practice, you're like, you're supposed to practice, it'll make no sense.
Future's flashing before your eyes. You're in all this debt. Are you going to get matched?
No.
Teaching those, it was a tough time. I'm like, you're not the same person. Yeah, but really, thank you for sharing that. So many people hear that. It's really incredible.
And I think when you hit those moments, and I don't know if people out there are religious or not, but, you know, for me, again, my step one score was like painfully average. I was like, am I going to have to change my career goals, all of that? But, you know, you keep in mind, like for me anyway, God didn't bring me this far just to bring me this far. Like there is some way, you know, I have aspirations, I have goals. He didn't put that stuff on my heart for no reason. So, you know, I took that, I gave myself, you know, you give yourself the space to grieve, you know, after step one. I'm pretty sure I sat there for like 2 days, ate chips, watched TV, and then you get up and you move forward with your game plan.
Awesome. And does anyone else have anything to share in terms of difficulties, low points before we move on? No. Okay. We're gonna go right into core rotation. So I think we talked a lot about like M1, M2 stuff, like exposure. You guys talked a lot about step one already, so that's great. We can move on to M3 year, core rotations, kind of how you got through them, how you knew all these other rotations weren't for you. And I think some of you guys mentioned that you had some anesthesiology experience during that time. Can you guys talk a little bit about that as well?
So for me, when I went into third year, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I knew that I had a slight interest in OB, maybe emergency medicine, maybe anesthesia. So I just like went into everything with an open mind. And for me, something that I found was I liked everything for like a small amount of time. And then after like a couple of weeks, I was like, okay, so what am I going to do for the rest of my life? So that was also a tough point for me because I felt like I was going through a bunch of rotations, but I'm like, none of these are it. And I feel like people talk about third year, like you hit rotations and then you get this light bulb of like goes off and it's like you find your specialty. But I felt like the year was going by and I hadn't gotten that light bulb. So for me, I tried to sit down and think about what I liked about each specialty that I did like, because I liked everything for different reasons. And then, so for me, I just like picked out those things that I liked and made sure I got my anesthesia elective. I signed up for my anesthesia elective, and then I found that anesthesia kind of combined the things that I like from different specialties into one. So what I would say for people, like, don't put too much pressure on yourself to find a specialty early, because like, even though it's 1 year, you do have more time than we like to make ourselves feel like we have. Like you think you have to go in and know, but I say like, don't stress yourself too much, give yourself time. And eventually you find something that you like more than everything else, and it all works out in the end.
Yeah, I think in going through everything, also keep the bigger picture of your life in mind. You know, medicine is not your entire life. Your specialty is not going to be the only thing that you do. So, you know, when I was going through, there were a lot of things I loved. I loved OB, I loved peds. But, you know, in peds, I was like, I want kids of my own. Am I going to want to be dealing with other people's kids all day? Perhaps not. So I left that alone. And then like OB, you know, my parents are OBs and I still watch them leave the house at like 3 o'clock in the morning because, you know, a pregnant woman did labor. No, I'm not doing that. So, you know, even though I loved the content and I loved the subject matter and the surgeries and all of that, like I just, you know, pictured life 20 years down the line if I want everything that comes with the specialty, and I didn't.
I completely agree with looking at the long-term picture. And that was something that kind of was a little bit of a struggle for me when I was deciding, because I knew that I wanted to do something procedural based. So I had my surgery and OB-GYN rotations in the middle of third year. And then when I had, it was after 6 weeks of surgery, I had 4 weeks of trauma surgery and acute care surgery, and then 2 weeks of cardiac surgery. And I was like, there is no way this lifestyle is sustainable for me. And I was like, I don't even have time to work out. And I love working out. And I was like, this can be my whole life. And at that point I was like, okay, maybe OB-GYN. And I had that anesthesia experience with the cardiac anesthesiologist. And I was like, okay, I'm interested in, but let me see about OB-GYN. And with OB-GYN too, I was like, maybe. But then like, I remember one time one of my attending was telling me about how she had been in the hospital for like obscene amount. I think it was like 36 hours, something like that. And I'm like, nah, bruh, this is, and then I talked to like the clerkship director, because I was really like, okay, how does OB-GYN, like, does your life change after residency? We all know residency is going to be hard. And how is that after residency for OB-GYN? And she was like, well, you know, I have all this unused vacation time. I can't even use it because, you know, and I'm like, this is, so I definitely think you should think about long-term. Some things, especially if you're someone that, you know, is a very go-getter attitude, can look very sexy initially. Like, you know, I'm going to be on top of things. I'm going to be doing things. I'm going to have a busy lifestyle. It's going to be great. But when you're like in your 40s, and when you have like, if you want kids, your kids are teenagers and you want to spend more time with them, you want to start thinking about those things. Like, okay, am I still going to be happy in the long term? And that's something I definitely thought about. And I was like, nah, for those ones anyway, for me.
And I also made sure I had that conversation with the attendings in every specialty that I was interested in. I sat down and talked to them. I was like, "Are you happy? Like, do you enjoy your life? Would you choose this again if you could go back, like, and apply to residency again?" And like, I appreciated the honesty that people gave to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people out here struggling.
I totally agree with everything that you guys are saying. But for me, like pretty much second year, I already decided I was doing anesthesia, because again, I've talked to resident a lot by then, you know, and even the resident, we were in like 24-hour shift, and they were telling me this is the best fit out ever, like at the end of 24 hours. So I'm still like, okay, if you guys still feel like this after this crazy shift that we just had, there must be something there. So, but pretty much when I started third year, again, I was already sure that it was anesthesia, but I still went in each specialty with open mind. I was like, who knows, I might change my mind. That didn't happen. I think literally every rotation was just a confirmation. I was like, that's why I'm doing anesthesia. That's why I'm doing anesthesia. And if anything, I was able to find in each specialty the niche for anesthesia, like to the point that, like, you know how you start a rotation and your doctor was like, oh, so I'm sure you want to go into peds. Oh, I'm sure you're going to be, and I'll be like, no, I want to go into anesthesia. However, I am hoping to, like, you know, possibilities. You know, that was always my answer. And so somehow I think because they knew that I wanted to do that specialty, they always try to somehow apply it to anesthesia, which I thought I was really cool. Like my surgery rotation, every morning he just told me, oh, you know what? Instead of coming around with me, why don't you just go start with the anesthesiologist? Because, you know, anesthesiologists start early. So every single morning, except for like the first week, I literally was not even rounding with my doctor. He would just wait for me in the OR, and I'll just go with the anesthesiologist. Because, and I think it's because, you know, I was honest. I told him, well, that's my interest, but I'm still going to learn. I'm still going to do all the things you want me to do. But, you know, and I had the same thing with my psych. Like, you know, he made me go to all this ET, what's it called? The electrophysiology, ketamine clinic. Like he made me do anesthesia related stuff. So, but going through a third year, it was just a confirmation of the specialty all the way to, and then I ended up doing EM fourth year, which was the other thing that I was considering at any point. And again, that was just confirmed it. I was like, no, this is kind of like primary care, but just quick, you know? And I was like, I don't want it. So third year and fourth year was just a confirmation for me.
And what about, because I know you guys talked about anesthesiology compared to other rotations, but like, what about anesthesiology attracted you to anesthesiology and like the lifestyle?
I can go on and on.
Y'all limited amount of time. Let's just go somewhere.
I'll give you a few things, and they're gonna, you know, they have other things. But to me,
what'd you say?
before even the lifestyle, it was just continuity care versus just day by day. I'm the type of person that I feel like if I wasn't to a specialty that I have to follow up with a patient in like 6 months, I'll be calling that patient every day during that follow-up time. Like I feel like I take on people's healthcare even too much. So I need to be able to go home at the end of the day and it's like closing a book. Like, you know, I'm done with that chapter for today and I can start another one tomorrow. So to me, I realized that continuity care was not just going to work for me in the long term. And then, like, I think Habi said it, it was just the right, to me, it's like the right perfection between working with your brain and working with your hands. You know, you get to think through things. It's very like mental, but at the same time, there's still a lot of like procedures that you get to do. Plus, I was never into digging into people's body, you know, so surgery, that's too messy. Um, and again, like, you know, and I just love like the lifestyle. Like I talk to even the residency, they still tell me that even a resident, they still feel like they have a life. In the long term, again, attending, like I've never talked to an anesthesiology resident or attending telling me that, oh, this is not sustainable or is like crazy down the line. Everybody I've talked really, really well about, even the people that are busy, even OB anesthesiology, which, you know, I think is what cardiac and so those are like busy within, they're the busy specialty within anesthesia. They were still talking, you know, about it as being manageable. And so, you know, that was also a big thing for me.
I agree with everything she said regarding the lifestyle and the pros of anesthesia. I would also say, I just really love that once you're done, you're done. Like I don't have it following me home because I already have other things that I'm concerned about, you know, outside of the hospital, and I have a life, I treasure my life outside of the hospital. And I just love that I can compartmentalize that in a way. And for me, a big thing also was just the people. The people in anesthesia are just so awesome. Like I just felt like I found my people. And you will, for some people in choosing their specialty, it's like they found the people that they just clicked with and it just worked out really well. And that was a huge thing for me when it came to anesthesia. And also just the diversity in anesthesia, the specialty as a whole. You have the opportunity to, you know, do OB, if OB-GYN anesthesia, if you are interested in that women population. You have the opportunity to do regional anesthesia, just working with blocks. And if you're really into that as well, you have the opportunity to do cardiac. You can do pain. If you still really love that patient continuity follow-up, you can still do that as well. You can do ICU care. If you really do love medicine and, you know, you also really like the, you know, the acuity of the cases and rounding, you know, you can still do ICU. So I just love that there's diversity within the specialty too, which is really awesome.
So, kind of piggybacking off of that question, someone did ask a question in the chat about the dynamic between CRNAs and anesthesiologists and how, you know, a lot of certain fields these days, a lot of the, you know, CRNAs or PAs or people of that nature take a lot of the cases or are taking a bigger share. So how do you guys feel? Do you guys see that? How do you guys see the future of anesthesiology going? Do you think CRNAs will take more of your work, or has that bothered you at all?
I think it's kind of, okay, I think people haven't realized that, but the same AA or CRNA is the same thing as you have a PA in internal medicine or a PA in, like, I feel like every specialty
midwife and
yeah, like every specialty has their own anesthesia nurse anesthetist or anesthesia assistant. You know, it's just, I guess, fairly newer in anesthesia, probably in the recent years. And so like people are thinking, but I personally don't see that as a threat. If anything, I see that as an additional support, because that allows you to focus on certain specific areas, you know, be more, especially for me, I want to do academic medicine. So instead of sitting in the room the whole time, I can focus on teaching. I can focus on maybe more research. I can, you know, you can do all the things with your time instead of literally sitting from A to, you know, B in the room with a case. So I don't see that person as a threat. I never see that. And based on my anesthesia experience working in the OR, I see them, I work with the nurses, and I saw the differences and how you always going to need an anesthesiologist, even when, you know, you're going to have the nurse or the anesthesia or the AA anesthesia assistant. So.
Yeah, I think this debate has been going on for many years, but it never actually ends up being that the CRNAs take over. There's always like, with any mid-level in any specialty, there's always going to be a push for more autonomy. But as things happen, as different cases happen, as time goes on, you realize that like we do have that job security and you need a physician anesthesiologist. So I think it's like a rumor that's been long going, and they always say, oh, it's coming, but it's something that's not really going to happen anytime soon.
Awesome. Does anyone else have anything to add to that? All right. So moving on to, I guess, M3/M4 year, depending on when you did your anesthesiology elective, what tips do you have for succeeding on your anesthesiology elective? Any resources that you also know about to use during this rotation?
Baby Miller, I think, is the textbook to go to while you're on a rotation. No need to read Big Miller. I don't even think a lot of residents or attendings even get through Big Miller, but Baby Miller is a really good resource. And if you just Google that, like you'll see what I'm talking about. And as far as succeeding on your anesthesia rotation, I think being proactive is huge. People are not going to let you do things unless you ask. And so, you know, if you want to intubate, be like, hey, and they'll ask you, have you ever done this before? You'll be like, no, but if you show me, I'm pretty sure I can get the hang of it. And, you know, you just go from there. Same thing with like placing IVs, placing A lines. You have to be proactive and ask to have those opportunities. And then just being a personable, you know, easy to get along with person. As Darren was saying, the people in anesthesia are amazing. I haven't really met an anesthesiologist I haven't liked yet. So I think that if you're easy to get along with, if you're proactive, if you're eager, if you show you want to be there, you'll have a great time on your anesthesia rotation.
And be helpful in the little way medical student can be helpful. It's not like we can do much, especially with anesthesia, but like little things like, you know, when patients are being moved inside the room or moved out, you should be the student to take the blanket. Like you should find out what the core is. Like little things that shows the resident or who you're working with that, okay, they're not just, you know, standing there, you know, waiting for everything to happen. So help when you can. Like a good trick is ask the nurse, hey, do you need me to get you this real quick? Like something within reason, obviously. But I think little things like that shows that, because, you know, I feel like anesthesia, yes, like there's really sometimes not much that you can do. Like, especially if it's like a difficult case, you probably can't intubate. If it's a difficult case, you probably can put an IV. So you might find yourself literally just standing there the whole case, you know? So if you can still find ways to help hold the door, things like that, I think that alone will show, you know, that you're proactive. And ask questions and try to find something to talk about with the resident. Even if it's not necessary about anesthesia, but just like, you know, ask them what is their day-to-day life, ask them what research do they use, like ask them just how, you know, is the life of an anesthesiologist. Just try to find things to talk about, not just, you know, stand there for 2-3 hours.
Showing interest.
Yep.
Yeah. I also wanted to make a plug for another book. I know Alan mentioned Baby Miller, but there is another book that I found to be particularly helpful. It's called, I'm trying to show it on here. It's probably not going to show. Okay, not going to show. It's Duke Anesthesia Secrets. It's really great. It's in the same format as Secrets for Step 1 or Step 2.
Step 2 Anesthesia Secrets, or
it's Duke's Anesthesia Secrets.
Okay, got you. Okay.
Duke's Anesthesia Secrets. Yeah, it's in the same format of Secrets for Step 1, if you're familiar with that book, where it's like a question and answer kind of format, and it gives you like the nitty gritty, what you need to know without extra words. So I found that to be particularly helpful as well.
Awesome, cool. And moving on to, we have a question here about conferences and organizations. I think you guys might have mentioned that before we were chatting earlier, but are there any conferences or organizations to look out for, particularly for URMs?
ASA, I think, is the big one.
And ASA means
American Societies.
Somebody said it. I can never say
American
it.
Society of Anesthesiologists.
Yeah, that was before we went live. So I think
yeah,
American Society of Anesthesiology.
Especially if you were a third year, even second year, one thing I would say, because that's what I did second year, I started working on research on anesthesia. Come to find out, again, just because I asked people, it was my program director, she's the program director by the time. I was doing this research, and it was about, I think, March or February of that year. And she was like, you know, I was working, and she was like, oh, you know, there's a deadline to submit this abstract. We can submit this abstract by April if you get it done. And I was like, oh, I'm getting it done. So she gave me extra motivation, you know, did the whole abstract, and I was able to submit that by April 1st. I think it's about that every year. And then that abstract got accepted. And then I was able to present that same year at the actual conference, which is usually in October. So, but that's the thing. If you don't know, right? If you don't ask, you're never going to find out once you even submit the abstract to begin with. So look at deadlines of whatever residency you're interested, go to their website, find out apps for submission and things of that nature. Because hey, little you know, you might be able to go to the conference, which I was already planning to, but now I'm going there with actually something to say, and because I found out that, I did the same exact thing last year and ended up presenting also in October when I just went, like the last one that we had. So look out for things like that. And the ASA, I like it. I mean, I don't know, other specialty have sometimes multiple resources, but for anesthesia, I think that's for medical students, I think that's like the main one. And if you join, be a member. If you're interested in anesthesia, I think that's just needs to be a thing. It's cheap, it's like 10 or 20 bucks, I think. Because then it gives you a lot of opportunity. Like you have to be a member to submit the abstract. There is also, again, because I'm just that type of person, and I know that I need to find different things to put in my application. So I actually applied, it was like a year ago to be a delegate for my school. That is something like kind of a little bit random that, again, you have to know if you go on the website and you dig around. And I found out you can be a delegate, and the process was really easy. All I need is somebody from my school to recommend it. And again, I went to a program director, she wrote me a letter, and all of a sudden I'm a delegate for my school. And so when I went in October, I participated to their meetings. I did a whole bunch of networking with other people, and again, that was just an opportunity, again, to have something on your resume. When I went on my interview, they asked, oh, so what is this delegate thing? What did you do? Because again, I guess it's one per school, so it can't be that many people in the country doing it. And I explained, I said, oh, I thought that was cool. I told them what I learned from it, pretty much is how to improve some of the things that you discuss is how to improve your anesthesia interest group for your school. So I say, this is what I learned from it. This is what I brought back to my school. And they didn't even know that was a thing. The program director didn't even know it was a thing. So just show all these little things, just show that you're really like digging the field. You're really into it to the point that you're seeking all this other opportunity that not everybody is seeking. So just be proactive, watch out for, conferences, and ASA is every year, is in October, and is right about when you submit your ERAS. So it's about a month after, which is perfect, because that's when you go into all these people's face and you tell them that you tell them why you want to go to their program. You tell them, you can look all nice and professional, match your ERAS picture, and what do you guys think? I'm pretty sure you guys all went to ASA.
I completely agree. I went to ASA. I didn't join ASA until end of third year, similarly fourth year, because I didn't know I was about anesthesia. I wanted to do anesthesia. But I would say that if you are interested, even as a second year now, definitely sign up to be a member. The membership, I think it was $10 for students, which is super cheap, because once you're no longer a student, things are like $100. So sign up as a student, $10. And then once you do sign up for ASA, it does automatically enroll you in your state's anesthesia organization as well. So I actually also went to ASA in October, but I also went to my state's anesthesia conference as well. So Ohio Society of Anesthesiologists, and they had that one in I think it was September. September. That one was September. And that one was a good way to show my face to the different program directors who were in Ohio, because Ohio has a good amount of anesthesiology programs here between Case Western, Cleveland, Ohio State, and all that. So that was like a smaller setting, since they would all be there, to also kind of introduce myself and have more one-on-one conversation.
And the conference is free.
Yeah, and so the state ones are free, actually. Yeah, that part.
Even the national one is free. You just have to make your way there. And again, if you do research, like my first year, I was sponsored by my department on top of that. Nice. So it ended up being free everything. Last year I didn't. I presented a poster, but they didn't sponsor me. But it was in Orlando, which for me was closer. So it was just the drive. So just look into things like that for sure. I think it was really, really helpful.
Major keys. Major keys.
Awesome. And also to follow up on the research aspect that was brought up, someone has a question from the chat. Did anyone have to do a research here? It doesn't sound like anyone did, but did research during medical school suffice? And like, how important would you say that research is to your application?
I would say that it's only, something to do if that's something you want to do. I don't think it's necessary for this is not ortho or derm, like, or anything like that. Research during medical school definitely suffices. You do not need a research year to go into anesthesia. And again, research is only something you should do if you can talk about it in your interviews, you know, sound intelligent about it. If it's something that you're passionate about, that's even better. But not necessary, you know, it's not something just to do because you think you should include it on your application, for sure.
Perfect. Anyone else have any input for that?
Yeah, I think I totally agree. And again, it kind of goes back to what are your strengths and weaknesses, right? And what are the things that you can do to improve whatever specialty you're trying to go to. So, I mean, I don't think it's ideal if, okay, you hate research, so you don't want to do research, you don't want to do in a leadership position, and your scores are like not helping. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's a balance. Like, I'll say if you have great, amazing score, research is really probably not going to really make a difference in anesthesia, you know, but it might make a difference if, you know, your scores might not necessarily be where you want them to be, then showing interest just in the field in a different way might help, you know. So that's what I think it might make a little bit of a difference. But
and I think it's important to look at yourself as an applicant and what picture you're trying to paint for yourself. So if you're someone who's saying that you want to go into academic medicine in the future, for example, like, okay, you have mentoring, you have teaching, but they'll be wondering, like, what in your application do you have that shows that you have an interest in academic medicine? And if you have research on there and you can talk about it, then that kind of like helps prove your point and helps you to paint a complete picture that you know what you want for your future. So it's not necessary, but if it's in the picture you're painting for yourself, I definitely think you should try to get involved.
So with all that being said, what are your thoughts on a research year? Is it pretty much never really necessary? Or?
You don't need to, yeah. None of my classmates took a research year in medical school. Like, some of us came into medical school already having done research, but within medical school itself, you don't need to do a research year now.
It's not necessary. I mean, I think if it's something you're super passionate about and there are all these projects going on, then sure. I mean, you know, feel free to do the research year, but it's definitely not necessary.
I've heard it as a trend for all the specialty, like have some classmate like neurosurgery or all those high end, so they'll take that extra year to do a research year, but I've never really heard somebody trying to do anesthesia taking like a whole research year.
Yeah.
Awesome, perfect. So let's dive a little deeper into the application process. So we do have a few questions here. Did you all apply into a prelim program that is internal medicine or surgery separately? Or did most of the programs you applied into have a clinical base year embedded in it? And then we have a question that what kind of programs, I'm guessing categorical and advanced. If you guys could define what that all means for us, that would be helpful. But like, which ones are better? So I think those are all related, if I understand correctly.
So I can start. I focused on geographic area, so kind of East Coast. And when I was going through the programs, I applied to both categorical and advanced because you don't spend any extra money doing that and you don't lose anything by doing that at all. So I applied to both, and then I applied to a total of 10 prelims because that's what the $100 covered. I wasn't spending over that for prelim programs because there are very, very few programs that are solely advanced. So it really wasn't that necessary. Categorical, to define it, is the full 4 years of residency. So it includes that clinical base year or that prelim year plus the 3 clinical anesthesia years, whereas advanced programs only offer those 3 clinical anesthesia years. A lot of programs offer both. So they'll have like 10 seats for categorical and like an extra 2 for advanced or something along those lines. There are very, very few programs that are solely advanced. And I think the only one I applied to was Emory. So, yeah.
Yeah, I pretty much applied to all categorical. I think I only applied, I didn't even realize the 10 comes with it. I should have probably do that. So do apply. But I think I only applied to like 4 or 5. And I ended up getting like 1 interview. So I was like, it's not meant for me. So it's great. Because I was just focusing, all the programs that I wanted to be or interested in were all categorical. And I just really was looking. And I thought that there was enough categorical program for me to kind of just focus on it. And in fact, when interviews start coming in, it was just pretty much all categorical. And then that one interview that I got for Prim, I didn't even go. So I just rule out all the advanced program and just focus on categorical. But by all means, if it's free, it's 10, you should definitely apply to all of them. Why not?
And what, Abby, did you have something to say? Did you want to add?
Oh, yeah. So I was just going to say the same thing as Alan, basically, that I personally applied both categorical and advanced positions because it didn't cost any extra money, and it makes no difference. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'd say one is not better than the other. I kind of struggled with like rank, as far as my top ranks, I struggled with whether or not I should stay home and save this money for this first year. But I was like, let me go live my life.
Wait,
And then
oh, go ahead.
I would also say, like, if it's more important for you to be at a specific program, then you might want those two chances to be there, like by having a categorical and an advanced like position to rank there, versus if what's more important to you is just being in the same place for 4 years, then you can go ahead and just apply or all categorical. It depends like what's on your priority list.
Right.
And is the categorical, the first year for the categorical, because the categorical is the one that comes all inclusive, correct? I'm learning as
inclusive. The first year is still going to be internal. Everyone's first year is going to be a little bit different based on the program. Okay. But for the most part, it is mostly internal medicine during your first year.
Got it.
Categorical just means you don't have to necessarily travel after your intern year somewhere else to go to your anesthesia program to go start that. So.
Okay, perfect.
And can y'all talk about, so if you happen to match into an advanced program, what are the options for your first year? What can you do?
I mean, you can do an internal medicine prelim year. You can do a surgery prelim year. I know someone who did that like on purpose. I don't know why. You can do a transitional year, which I don't really know a whole lot about those if someone else wants to chime in, but they're kind of like fluffy and nice and lighter than the other two options.
So transitional is pretty much doing third year of med school, but with responsibilities, because it's like you're rotating through, like you doing definitely like it's going to be like 3 or 4 months of internal medicine, but then you have emergency medicine, you have peds, you have a little bit of surgery, you have trauma, you have like a little bit of everything. You get a taste of, and then you have usually most programs you have a few months in anesthesia actually, like in which you do like either pre-op or whatever the case, or pain. But that's what a transitional year kind of looks like. So it depends on your preference, but some people love surgery and they do a whole
Can you guys talk a little bit about, I know it's like with everything that's going on, aways may be a bit difficult right now, but are aways necessarily like important for the application process?
So everyone I talked to, my program director, different attendings, mentors, they told me for anesthesia specifically, aways are not as important. And even in my class, I think there were like 12 or 13 of us that applied into anesthesia. I was the only one who did an away. In a way, they'll tell you, at least they told me, it's only important if you have a specific program that you want to end up at. That is the only reason. Otherwise, for anesthesia, it really doesn't make a difference. Okay. I did an away because I had a specific program that I wanted to end up at, which was University of Cincinnati. And that's because my husband lives here. He's also a resident too. So I had a very specific reason for wanting to do that away rotation. They'll tell you an away rotation can hurt you because, you know, if you do go into that rotation and you don't perform well, you've screwed up your chances. So you do want to come in prepared. But as far as like needing to do one for anesthesia, my school told me that it's not necessary. It's not necessary. And I don't know if you guys can talk about what your experience was.
Yeah, I got the same advice. And again, I did an away as well, but only because I wanted to be at UPenn. So I went to UPenn and worked my butt off, and now I'm going to UPenn. But yeah, again, you know yourself, know if you're not that proactive, kind of outgoing person that, you know, if you feel like other people perceive you as standoffish, even though you might not be, then maybe in a way it's not for you, because if that's how they're going to perceive you, they're not going to, you know, that's not going to go well for you. So know yourself, know your strengths and weaknesses, and then decide whether or not an away is for you. But like Darren said, it's not necessary at all.
I agree.
Awesome. I think to kind of touch on what Darian, you mentioned before, that you have a partner who is that kind of affected your, thank you, can you help me out here? I can't speak English.
I was just speaking about the process, whether you're in an interview or not, how do you notify, the program of your interest in a particular location for whatever reason? How do you bring it up during the interview process and during the process in general?
Yeah, my application process in general was very regionally based. So I wanted to end up in the Midwest. So that limited I didn't apply to that many programs, to be honest. But also in my interviews, I would try to bring up that, I particularly want to stay in the Midwest or in this particular region or state based on having family here. My husband's here, but also have other family here in Cincinnati as well. So that I try to insert that in some way. It oftentimes comes up because you'll find on your interview trail that anesthesia interviews are actually very personable. They're very comfortable. You kind of just chat, it's a conversation. So during those conversations, things come up. It's not necessarily like a question, answer. And there are ways in which you can find you can interject a little bit about what your desires are. And that's how it worked out for me.
Yeah, for me, I because I applied up and down the East Coast, I wanted to make sure that in my application, there was something that connected me to certain cities. So I wrote 5 different versions of my first personal statement, but just with the 2 lines changed about, I would love to be in Philly or I'd love to be in Atlanta because so, just so they knew that there was some sort of connection there. Because a lot of these places are if they're not, a lot of these places will say oh, she's from New York, why would she want to move to Atlanta? But my mom lives in Atlanta, so there was a reason for that, and they may screen you out because of that. I mean, not just because of that, but they may not invite you to interview because they think that there's no reason for you to come.
So yeah, I also kind of applied based on where I wanted to be, and it was mainly southeast, I would say. But I still, at the beginning of the interview season, I was scared. And so I was like, I can't just be bold and wanted to say, I want to be in the South. What if nobody in the South wants me? So I just applied broadly initially. But even within that, I still look in the different state. I was okay, what is a city in California that I can potentially, even if I don't want to be there, I can potentially see myself there. It was San Diego, the most southern one, or Colorado. Oh, Denver is cool. So I kind of use that strategy, but some states like Illinois, nothing against, but I can't deal with the cold at all.
I feel that. Not bad.
So it's in the city that is cold, like New York, I still find, okay, what is something that, New York is still cool. I can still see myself, dealing with that type of cold,
Wait.
No, Chicago's way colder than New York.
I don't even know, but I was that was kind of my when I was applying, what how I went by, and I know I want to be coastal, like water, and so that's how I went by. And then when interviews start flowing in, I was for example, I put California, a little bit of the school up north, like Denver. I put them I scheduled them late in January because I was well, if I get the places I want to go, I'll end up canceling those interviews because I really don't want to go there. It's expensive, So that's another strategy you can use. If you're not really trying to go there, try to schedule that interview at the very end, so that if something comes up, by December, I was pretty much done. I end up canceling all those interviews, less space for other people. Because I know my heart was not even there, and I had enough interview places that I wanted to be. So that's just the strategy I use. But I would say this is not the time to be picky in general. Just apply broadly. And then later you can reassess. You can be picky when it's time for you to, rank list. You go, okay, I can rank you. I'm not going to rank you. No, I'm not going to rank you, But just apply broadly. That's the best advice I can give you.
Anyone else have anything else to add to that?
No, I basically echo the same sentiments that everyone else said.
Okay. Great. So it's kind of branching off from that, some of you, I think Alan or Ornella mentioned how many schools you applied to, but how many schools did you guys apply to, if you feel comfortable sharing that? And then how did you kind of come to that number?
I did 45.
I think I also did 45, and that was just like,
That was
these
the
are the
average
ones that I can tolerate. Like these are the places that I can live for the next 4 years. So
it was based on that. And that was kind of, I think maybe 5 more, 10 more might be the average, but that was the average a lot of people told me. And another thing, like, for example, my school program wanted me to really stay really bad, you know, and so because of that, I was like, okay, I don't want to use that word, the worst case scenario. It's not a bad word, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to pick based on the places that I'd rather go. And if I know I'd rather stay where I am right now, then I'm not going to apply to that program, if that makes sense. So that really helped me to narrow down and to be like, okay, 45 program. Because these are all places that, okay, I'll, you know, I can see myself going there. But in some other places that I was like, no. I just didn't apply because I was like, you know, I'd rather stay in my home program. I'd rather stay in, you know, where I am. So that was kind of my strategy.
Yeah, so I applied to about 35 programs based on geography was my determining factor. I looked up and down the East Coast where I was willing to be, and I applied to basically almost all the programs. Like if I would actually consider them, I applied to all of them. And then I looked at my list and I had a good amount of like reach schools, like mid-tier schools, and like I guess safeties. So like because I had that range in the different programs I was applying to, that I felt that that number was good for me. But if you have majority something that schools that are considered reach for you, then you might want to increase that number. If you have a higher number of like safeties or community programs that you feel like you will definitely get into, then you can maybe like decrease that number. But I would just say like it's not the time to be frugal, just like really apply and like shoot your shot basically. But I applied to 30 and I went on maybe like 17 interviews, anesthesia. And then for prelims, they can be a little bit more competitive because you're competing with dermatology, ophthalmology, like a whole bunch of different specialties. So for prelims, I applied to like 20 prelims, and I probably went on like 6 interviews for prelim programs alone.
So I would say people should follow their advice, because my case was a little bit different. I applied to a lot less. I applied to 18 programs. But again, my case was different just because I was very focused on geography and ending up where my spouse is. So that was a big limiting factor for me. So I would say most people apply. I think the average, I think for anesthesia is 40. So they'll typically tell you to apply to 40. My dean told me to apply to 40 and I did not, because I just wanted to do what I wanted to do and it worked out just fine. But I would still say follow what everyone else is doing. 35 to 45 sounds great.
There are some tools out that are like developing and allow you to compare your stats and your experiences to the other people that have matched or interviewed at certain places. So the Texas Star, I don't know if that's the whole name, but
yeah,
it's Texas Star.
Y'all are on a roll.
I would actually mention, so that's another reason why I felt confident applying with my number of 18, because I did use the Texas Star to even see like what are my chances of even getting interviews, so I know that I'm not just throwing away my application. At least based on the Texas Star will show you at this particular program, this person with the step 1 score, this person with the step 2 score, did they get an interview in the first place? And you can kind of get an idea of, okay, if with this person got an interview, does that mean I might get an interview? And then it also shows you like what region they're coming from. So it can show you, okay, does this program have maybe a regional preference? It shows you like, you know, if the applicants had AOA, if they had like different other characteristics. So it can help you make an informed decision. And for me, I was able to use that to my advantage.
I feel bad now because that's what that survey that I've been receiving
for the past
and I was ignoring it like, no, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not. Okay, I'm gonna go look for it. My bad. I'm able to. That's what that is. Okay, like, so it's a survey that they're asking the people that I guess match or whatever, like your information. And I was like, after I was done, I'm like, I'm done with survey. Y'all not gonna make me do anything else with school related. So okay, I'll take care of it.
Several surveys. There's like a bunch of them, but
it's a lot.
I might have passed. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And Abby, is that what you kind of used to determine what is reach and what is safety?
So one thing I used was a website called Frida. It's not 100% accurate, but it gives you an idea. And then I also, each year, our anesthesiology interest groups ask the people who matched in our school to fill out kind of like an Excel spreadsheet questionnaire. You can see their step score, the extracurriculars they did, how many programs they applied to, where they matched. So basically, like every question that you'll have about yourself, basically, we have each previous year's applicant do. And I kind of looked at that to help me, because if an applicant looked like me or had scores like me, I kind of was able to base my application around there. So I would advise people to do that. If anyone is in AIG right now, like you can start that survey at your school yourself, just so each year's applicants has a better idea, because you may not be comparable to everybody nationally, but you might, like with the just looking at your school's pool, it might have applicants that look more like you and seem more like you.
Yeah, so I just kind of use my mentors. I use previous applicant and anesthesia, and I kind of pull information here and there, and then based on that, I kind of decide on like the magic number of 45.
Yeah. How did you guys get access to Texas Star?
I think your school has to be like a
School.
participant or something.
Yeah.
And
That's
you could
nice.
probably ask like your career advisor or somebody to give you the link.
Yeah. And there's also something called Residency Explorer. That's also,
That's new too, right?
yeah. So with that, you could put in your step score, your extracurriculars, your research, and it compares you to the residents at each program and says if you're like average on par with them, you're above average compared to them, or below average compared to them. And that can help you realize what's like a reach for you or like on par for you. But still, I would say don't ever, like if the system tells you that it's a reach, it may not actually be a reach for you. Still shoot your shot.
Yes.
Yeah, and do you guys know of any official step 1 cutoff for anesthesiology?
Honestly,
No, I mean, I think it's, case by case. A lot of places are implementing more holistic review of the application. So like Abby said, shoot your shot. Anything can happen.
Yep.
I personally know somebody matching anesthesia 2 years ago with a 210, and they successfully matched at a very good program. So it really, it doesn't, I don't think there's an official cutoff. They still probably will check your application if there's something interesting to them.
That's not going to matter much after this year.
Yes,
That's true.
Anyway,
That's true.
that's true.
But what we're hearing is don't rule yourself out, even if you are, because at least for the next, who knows where it's going to go with step 1 for this. I mean, they're still testing them right now because I think they started next month. But if you feel like yours is slow, don't rule yourself out. Is what I've heard.
Black students tend to disproportionately, rule ourselves out of these competitive specialties way higher, at a way higher rate than at others. Like,
Yeah.
look at these averages and stuff. It's like, yeah, nah. And, we deserve to be there. We are capable of being at these high spots, and we count ourselves out a bit too early.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's so important to talk to people who are ahead of you. Talk to people who are, if you're a third year, talk to the fourth years now, learn about, their experience, because you'll be very surprised. I remember when I was a third year, maybe second or third year, I was interested in a competitive specialty, some competitive surgery specialty. And this person was telling me, they matched into ENT. It was a top 5 program, and their step score was below 220. And it's ENT. And I was just like, this happens? So you'll be very surprised. You'll be very surprised. It's just like when you hear stories like that, it's just a reminder that, don't be afraid. Just shoot your shot. You never know how it will work out.
And one thing that I found interesting, especially what I noticed with anesthesia, is the newer program are actually more strict with scores, because I think it has to do with, they're new, and so they want to make sure that all the future resident they're going to have are like up here, right? They don't want no room for mistake. But I've noticed like the actual grade program, I'm talking about top 25 program on the list, they've sent interviews to, I would say everybody, I want to say use the word everybody, but they are way more open to interview. And like I got interviews from places that I'm like, dude, you interview me, but this new program did not send me an interview because like my safety. So I had that a lot during like this process, that I received interview from people that I was like, no, I was not supposed to get an interview from y'all, but thank you. And then the program that I thought it was like a slam dunk, I was going to get an interview because it's a fairly new program, and they were not really they didn't send me an interview. So like, you'll be surprised where, you know, where you can reach. I feel like some of this really good program, I feel like because they're good, they have a chance to actually pick good people or people that they like or people that they find interesting. While like newer programs, sometimes they just focus on, hey, we need to keep this accreditation going. We need to make sure that everybody is, you know, we don't need no resident that is barely passing step 1 or something like that. That was just my perception, personal experience. So shoot your shot.
And I think also as Black students, I mean, anesthesia is a pretty not diverse field. And so I think they're making a conscious effort to, you know, rectify that. So as Black students, you know, we have an advantage. We bring diversity to programs. I had a PD tell me flat out, like, you're a Black female and we want you. So, you know, use whatever you got, honestly.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of moving on throughout the process, have y'all thought about, well, first of all, are there other fellowships in anesthesia? And have y'all thought about any of these issues?
Everybody. No, everybody was like, yes.
So many.
Thought about it, yeah. So, you know, what are your thoughts about that? You know, do these questions come up in interviews? And
yeah, first of all, the beauty of anesthesia, I think, is it is a specialty, but it's actually pretty broad. It's like when you're actually in anesthesia, all of a sudden you have all this option. And I think that's all the fellowship for 1 year. And there's literally fellowship in all the different field. And during interview, they will ask you, but you can literally either say, well, you know, I haven't really thought about it. Like if you don't know, like you haven't really actually thought about a fellowship. Or if there's something that interests you, even if they don't have it, you can still say that's what interests you. Just make sure you kind of give a reason, you know, not just you randomly like something. But one thing I feel like almost everybody at least hacks me to my interview is like at least my interest. Do I want to stay academic or am I looking more into private practice? And for me, it was academics, but it also matched my application. Like it correlated with my experience as a teacher, my leadership opportunity, my mentorship things. So it was kind of just makes sense also for me to say yes. Well, and that's what actually I'm interested in to be interested in academia. So I think somebody brought it up earlier, like research, all these things are great, but if ultimately, let's say you want to do private practice, that's fine. So then, you know, I won't say waste your time, but don't try to focus too much on those things if you have no interest. But again, if you're trying to paint yourself as somebody interested in academia, then that's when research and leadership, all these other things, even involvement at the national level in anesthesia will matter during your interview.
And I will say also that there are opportunities during anesthesia residency to get involved with research if you are interested in a specific fellowship that may be more competitive or whatever the case may be. As Ornella mentioned, they are all 1 year, which is awesome. It's just 1 year. And then I don't know, for those who just joined in, I can say what they are again. There's 6 fellowships that I'm aware of, and they include peds anesthesia, ICU, which is critical care. There is cardiac anesthesiology. There is regional and acute pain. There is pain, which is chronic pain. And then there is, which one did I not mention yet? OB anesthesia. So there's definitely a diverse set. As far as what I'm interested in, I don't know. I kind of fluctuate between, you know, cardiac anesthesia is what really got me interested in anesthesia. And I'm like, maybe cardiac, but at the same time, I also did have a really great experience in peds anesthesia. At the same time, you know, just doing 4 years and done wouldn't be so bad. So I feel like you have a lot of time during residency to figure that out. That's 4 years. So worrying about it now, it doesn't really matter. Even the topic of academic versus private, you do have more chances during, you know, you have a lot of time during residency to figure that out. As med students, we're only ever typically exposed to the academic side of things. Yeah. So it's really hard to say, like, what does private practice look like? And I hope that during residency, I'll get more of an insight to what that is like as well.
Yeah, and there are also some non-accredited fellowships that are kind of popping up, transplant, neuroanesthesia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of other things that are kind of popping up around the country. So whatever your niche is in the field, like Ornella and Darren said, it's very broad. So you can really find your home wherever in anesthesia.
Yeah. Agreed. And I feel like the more you're exposed to, the more you are able to find what kind of fits. So I have an idea, like right now, I think I'm maybe interested in one fellowship, but I'm sure as residency goes on and I see more, I'll learn what, like where I fit in more and what like I'm more passionate about. So.
Cool. Let's just shift back to applications to make sure we kind of make sure we cover everything. Did you guys do like a lot of extra, like I think you guys mentioned extracurriculars, or like can you guys, is there like a certain number, or like do you feel like, from what I've heard from previous panels, you should probably focus on the things that you're actually more passionate about and that you should talk about, or that you can talk about? Can you guys touch a little bit on like the number of extracurriculars or volunteer experiences you guys had?
Yeah, I mean, again, I did things that, you know, interest me. So like mentorship, leadership, and teaching, you know, so I pretty much, my resume said pretty much all this, but I personally had a lot, again, because I'm a busybody. I just tend to do a whole bunch of, and I regret it most of the time. I'm like, why did I take on this extra thing? It's a classic. I did that when I was in college. And so I did that when I was in med school. I was involved with SNMA. So I was like MAP liaison. That was, again, mentorship, because that's just, you know, things that I like to do. I was a tour guide because, again, I like to talk to people. So I worked for admission, and to new med student, I was just selling them my school, because to me, that was like easy to do. I was an aseptic technique instructor because my school, you know, and I was like, well, I'm doing anesthesia, I had to learn that anyway. Like, because at the time I was working anesthesia, and that's how I got exposed to that. And so I was teaching that. I was the president of the the anesthesia interest group. And I did some other stuff, and I did some stuff at the national level with the delegate. So I just found myself proactive. And again, I just know what are my weaknesses and what are my strengths. And I just focus all on the things that I enjoy doing. And, you know, I feel like things that I can build on. And that's exactly what I did. So.
Yeah. I don't think you did quite enough.
Not enough.
Oh, I also coordinate a clinic. I was coordinator of an equality clinic. So
I'm busy.
Yeah, I know.
I don't remember the number of experiences I put down on that application, but a lot of them had to do with SNMA. SNMA, so I was super involved in it. I also, for whatever reason, all of my community service revolves around food and feeding people. So, you know, I focused in on that on my application. I would say don't include one-time things unless, you know, they're particularly poignant, but, you know, include things that show continuity, longitudinal experiences, things that you can, you know, really talk about for a good amount of time, and that shows, you know, commitment to something.
Yeah, I would say, like, I don't remember the exact number I had either, but I had a lot, but I just made sure they kind of fit the themes of what I felt defined me as an applicant. So I had like mentoring and teaching stuff. I had a whole bunch of stuff where I was working with vulnerable populations, and I made sure that I put stuff where I wasn't just like a member, but I was a leader in it. So anytime I talked about it, I had a lot to say, and I was able to be actually passionate about it rather than just having like a long list. It was a list that added or emphasized things on my application.
Yeah, no, I agree with what everyone has said. Similarly, I don't remember the exact number, but a lot of mine did have a theme of leadership, as far as leadership roles and different things, whether it's SNMA or different organization on campus. I would also say that another section, I don't know if this is going to come up later or not, but at least in my anesthesia interviews, I did notice that most anesthesiologists do look at the hobby section of ERAS, and they are interested in bringing it up. So a lot of, a good number of conversation were around hobbies. And for me, that was like blogging, working out. I mean, I talked about dancing and Zumba with a couple of people, like it does come up. So I wouldn't ignore that section of your ERAS, because at least for anesthesia, they do try to find things to talk about, and they see like an interesting hobby. Oh, you like to read. What was the last book you read? Or, oh, you like to go to salsa dance. I talked about salsa dancing with a fellow, and that was really fun. So, I mean, they do look at that section, so.
Yeah, this is a side note, but somebody asked me this recently after they're in the process of applying for WAYS. And they were asking me like, what should I include anything that has to do with like my college experience? And I think you can include things that are actually meaningful. Like if it was just like kind of if it was something big that you did in in college, by all means, I think it's still relevant. But if it's like something that you feel like, man, I was a member of, like somebody mentioned, I was just a member of this, that might not be really relevant, you know? Like from my college, I was just your president of my school, because again, it was like a leadership thing. So I did add that, but I did not add that I was like part of the Toastmasters of like whatever the case is, like, you know, things like that I did not include it. So
Toastmasters.
Girl, you out here.
I'm a chill the residency. I'm chill the residency.
Oh my gosh. And I think we were talking a little bit about interviews. Can you guys give us some tips for interviewing?
Read your application again the night before your interview. Like, and again, the hobby section honestly was one of the bigger talking points. Like, I remember I put like I like to cook, but like I like to mix Nigerian and Italian fusion, because, you know, and I was trying to convey, just to remind them, you know, I'm also Italian, I'm Nigerian, but I'm also Italian, you know. But then come find out when I got there, like it was a chair asking me, oh, so tell me about this Nigerian Italian fusion that you make. So literally I had to come up with one of my recipe. And so, well, thank God it's something I actually do. And so I literally told him my whole recipe. But this man, the chair, wanted to know exactly what, like, a recipe that I'm fusing the two. Like, he was super interested, like, you know. So like they actually read it, and then they will ask you like very specific question based on it. So they'll just include random things that you really don't even do, or you don't even care, because then you're gonna find yourself like blinking, you know, during that conversation. So
I wonder if he's watching now.
I mean, I did it, so I actually do that.
And someone had a question about letters of recommendations. Could you guys speak to letters of recs from the department chair? Does it make it or break it if you apply with letters from anesthesia professors, but not a department chair?
I didn't have a department chair write my letter.
Okay.
No, I didn't have a department chair write my letter. I think it's, you know, you can have letters from other specialties. I think max you should have maybe 2 from anesthesia. They don't all need to be from anesthesia.
Okay.
You know, a letter from surgery or something, or, you know, honestly, anything that you performed well in and that somebody could speak to your strengths, you know, as a medical student, speak to your clinical knowledge, speak to how you interact with patients. Really just a letter from anybody who says those things is better than, you know, a letter from somebody with a title.
Right. Cool. I just want to make sure we've touched on all aspects. Is there anything in terms of the application you feel like we're missing on or missing out on right now? I think we've done letter of recommendation research, interview season. How much does it cost you guys? I know we had some talk of price before.
This is not the time to be cheap, okay? You want to go through the match once, okay? And I think I spent $1,100 on applications, and it's still, but you know, it was what was necessary.
Yeah.
I spent about the same on the application because we applied to the same amount of programs. But when it comes to actually the season, I spent way less than I thought, because hey, in the South, they're welcoming like that. So everybody paid for my hotel, and it's of the school up north. See, it's of the school up north that I had to pay for my own hotel.
Yeah, up north they don't
Really, like, you know, like New York, they go to hotel in New York. You know? So a lot of that, what I did is, so the school, literally school South, I didn't pay for nobody, like hotels, and I'm from the South, so I drove almost everywhere somehow. I didn't fly. I think my first 7 interview, I was able to drive, or, you know, pretty much that's what I did. And then later, the other interview that I had to pay for hotel, like when I went to Houston, I knew somebody, so I stayed with this person. And so they pretty much helped me with all the transportation and all that. New York too, like I have friends there. So I was able, so make sure you remember friends that you have in all those places, you know, don't just go and, you know, you could have had somebody like save you like $200, you know? And then flights, and again, I think it's the flights to those places, that's what cost me the most. But overall, I end up not spending much because of, again, a lot of programs will pay for your hotel. So
yeah, and I think scheduling comes into play there as well in terms of saving money. So try to schedule, you know, if you have to fly somewhere, schedule interviews at, you know, surrounding places that same week or the week after, so that you can, you know, book a one-way flight and kind of make a loop as opposed to flying back and forth from places. I drove to a lot as well, stayed with a lot of friends, because like Ornella said, that nobody in the North is paying for your hotel. Like down, you might get a hotel room. Anybody up here is like, you know, come if you want to, but we're not gonna help you get here. So yeah, so keep that in mind when you're applying. And I think a lot of the invites came out like early to mid-October, so your season was set by then, for the most part, and then you could really plan like how you were going to get around to all these places and in the most financially feasible way.
Yeah, I also spent like around the same as everyone else. I drove to pretty much every single one of my interviews up and down the coast, and stayed with friends when I could. I didn't spend much. Some people make it seem like you have to spend like $4,000 like plus, but like if you're just strategic and you reach out to people that you know, you can keep the cost at a minimum.
And I would say schedule, we haven't talked about it, but schedule your interview quick. Because I was like you guys said, for anesthesia, the interview started like immediately. Like I think I received my first interview September 23rd, and it was like a week after we just submit ERAS. And after that, it would kind of coming on, but like I don't know, choose a rotation that you can check your phone, or, you know, thank God I had my VA rotation, for example, a month before, and I had no service in that place, literally zero. So I could check my phone only when I left, because for me to check my phone, I had to leave the whole building. So I don't know how you're going to do that, but just make sure that you have good cell phone service and that you are able, you tell whoever you're working with, say, listen, it's interview season, I'm trying to get this job, you know, and most of the time they're understanding, they know your fourth year and it's September or October. So, you know, because my experience, I remember one time I received an interview, I was with the patient, with my doctor, and me and my doctor already had the little signal, like my signal was looking at him like this, and you know that means there's an interview. It was this nice man like I was working with. And so immediately he was like, go ahead. He was like, he literally excused me out of the room. I went and scheduled my interview, and I got it. And then let's see, it was like 30 minutes later, I was like, oh, maybe it was fine the date I picked, but I feel like I rushed in my process, you know? So I went, okay, let me see. Maybe I'll choose like a week before, a week later. I went back, no spots. And I was 30 minutes after I picked that scheduled. So if I even went 30 minutes after to even start the whole process, there was going to be no spot. Like, so, and in certain program, you can be on like I was on a wait list for a while on a program. I never got off that wait list because nobody dropped it. So like, you really need to be like quick, like schedule your interview quick. That's when I thought my Apple Watch was the most useful, because I was able to like look and screen what email is important, what is not. So if you want to get an Apple Watch, that's a good excuse to do that. But in general, like those interview dates will go fast. So don't think, oh, I'm gonna do it in like 30 minutes. 30 minutes is already too late. 10 minutes is like you're caught off. Like you need to be quick. So
wow.
And it's also helpful to make a specific email for ERAS that you only have ERAS coming through, so that when you see that email, you know what it is, and you like can quickly just like sound out all the other noise and just get the notifications that you need.
Interesting.
Yeah, they say also don't use your school one, use like a Gmail ideally, because somehow I guess after, I don't know why, but that was one of the upperclassmen told me, I think one of the start residency, to just use that account for some, like use a separate Gmail account or some other account. Don't use like your current medical school account, because I think eventually expires, and I don't know the reason, but that's what I was told. I don't know if you guys were told the same, to not use your school for your ass, but that's what I was told.
Interesting. I'm taking down all the tips.
Quick, kind of, I digress, but this is for kind of our undergraduate crowd. So I did ask a question. So, you know, let's say there's an undergraduate student and they have their eyes set on anesthesia. Is there any class or any experience that you would tell them to kind of, I see Darren's like, no. Anything
I was sorry. I was reading the chat. I was trying to see through the chat too.
You guys can focus on.
I guess I can talk about this. So as far as undergrad, Honestly, this is a little bit different for me just because I wasn't even a science major. I was a double major in sociology and African studies, and I had a minor in biology. So like honestly, you can major in anything as long as you do the pre-med requirements. Doing undergrad, I think the main thing I would focus on is just getting those mentors and getting exposure. So if you're able to shadow, I did shadowing in undergrad, shadow, if you're able to find an anesthesia mentor, that's great. But at that early stage, main thing is definitely just doing well in your pre-med courses, getting that shadowing clinical experience and having really good mentors, because those mentors will point you in the right direction. They'll hopefully help you read your personal statement for applying to medical school. And they'll just, they're very critical at that stage. So,
yeah. Definitely. And someone was
I would
asking,
say the same thing. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Abby.
Yeah, I would just say at that point, just focus on getting into medical school and just like making your application perfect for medical school in general. You don't have to focus on a specialty at that point. You can get your exposure, your shadowing, but just focus on like getting into med school because that's the biggest hurdle at that point.
Yep, I totally agree. And to summarize all of that, like focus on getting into medical school academically. So your MCAT, your GPA, and all that good stuff. MAPS was something that was also mentioned. If you have a pre-med society in your school, try to get involved with that. Mentoring, we mentioned the SMDEP program, which it may be called something else right now, but
now I think,
yeah, but it's it's some program for minorities. I might be able to put that in the description. And then shadowing is something else you should definitely get involved with. And then I think we have a question: if someone has previous experience in the medical field, will that help your application getting into medical school? I can say that probably, if you can talk about it, it's not going to guarantee that you get into medical school, but it's going to make you stand out as an applicant, I would say. If you guys have any other comments about that, let me know. No?
The more the better.
It's like not going to guarantee it, but like it definitely will help the application, I think.
Yeah, I think if, they want to know that you have an idea of what you're getting yourself into. So, if you can express that, then it's helpful.
Yeah. Definitely be able to talk about why it's meaningful to you, and what you've learned through the process. We do have quite some more questions on like interviews and stuff, but if you guys need to like head out, like I will totally understand, just because we are getting towards the end.
We're supposed to be home.
No, another phone meeting or something like that. But someone was asking specifically about interviews. When did they start and end? And this probably will vary because I know there's conversation going on right now about all that's going on, how that will impact the schedule. But they asked about when interviews started and ended, when the bulk of them were, and were you still interviewing into January? And then also scheduling strategically.
So my earliest interview, and the earliest that I heard of so far, was October 12th. That was very early because at that point, it was just super early. And then my latest one for me was sometime in December. You'll find that there are different formats for scheduling your interviews. There's a system called Thalamus, and that's one way you'll get interviews. And then there's just a regular ERAS website where you have to log in and accept the interviews that way. And then there's actual direct email to your actual email as well. So there's at least 3 different formats in which you can get interviews. So that can be kind of a lot to keep track of. As everyone mentioned, having your phone on you at all times is very important. Apple Watch, if you have one, is very useful during this time. If you're able to not have a rotation during October, that's probably more ideal just because there's a lot of things going on between you doing interviews. As I mentioned, my earliest was October 12th. And then I had a couple of days later, I had one on October 15th as well. So it's October can be a very busy month, depends on how you schedule it. So I would say having October off and November, if you're able to, is great. But yeah, it can go on from October till December or January for some people.
Yeah, I interviewed end of October through January. My last one was January 24th. I didn't really want to go, but I went. And the bulk of them were November, December for me. Those are definitely the busiest months. I was on an online elective or something, thankfully. But Yeah.
Yeah, for me, the bulk was actually pretty early. Like my first one was October 10th. That was the interview that I got like a week after. So like ERAS, and so I was excited. I scheduled right away. But pretty much my bulk was October, November. I had a lot in October and November. And then December I had a few, and then I canceled the one in January again because at that point I was like, I'm not going to, I'm like, there's no point. I know what my heart was, and that was just gonna be expensive. But I think, yeah, the bulk for anesthesia, I've noticed they're much earlier than some other specialty.
And it gets tiring. Like,
Yeah.
don't accept all these interviews thinking that like you're gonna go on all of them and be like, you know, your best bubbly self on all of them. Like it gets tiring. I think that last interview, the whole group was like over it. Oh, completely over it. And we didn't get lunch. We were like so upset. But but yeah, so I would say cap it at like 15. That was kind of my max, where I was like, after that, I felt, even the prelim interviews, I was like, I'm so over this. So yeah.
Yeah, I ended up going to 11 interviews. I was, they said the magic number is 12, actually 10, I'm sorry, 10, because they said the magic number is 12. I forget interviewing at the percent of matching, but at that point I was like, no, we're just gonna have to go with this, because it was just, I thought I was gonna be way more, like endure more, but December came, I was actually exhausted. Like, and I'm very social, but it's just the traveling, you living on the suitcase, interviews twice a week, meaning you're drinking twice a week, and you have to be like that twice a week, like, it gets to you. So, it's exciting time by all means, but it's still a lot,
Cool. This will be our last question. Well, second to the last question. We still have like a lighter question to end with. But how did you guys go about your personal statement? And yeah.
I wrote mine very early, just because I was lucky to have early exposure to anesthesia. So I actually wrote mine pretty much the end of second year. No, sorry, the beginning of third year, end of second year, I wrote mine. But again, it was just because I was thinking about something, I got inspired. And it was about a tree, actually. It was a tree that inspired me. It was a willow tree. And so my whole personal statement ended up starting from that. And during my interview trail, I was the willow tree girl. So, I mean, I don't know. I would say make sure you find something interesting that you can talk about and maybe you can expand on, because I thought it was nice, it was cool that a lot of them oh hey, you're the willow tree girl, come on, and immediately there was something to talk about on why I picked that. So for me, I was lucky because I already made up my mind and I was able to write it early, because I know a lot of people, even in all the specialty, it was like August and people were still working on the personal statement. So I'll say, don't be that person, have it done early, like this now, quarantine, perfect time to write your personal statement. If you're applying like in the fall, don't wait till August come that you're stressed with your sub-Is, you're like, your mind space to just write something in a, it might not be there. So the earlier the better, I think.
I probably started working on mine in like June or July, like at the end of third year, to be honest, because that's when I 100% knew that I was going into anesthesia, and I also procrastinated, so that's just when it happened. And I guess in terms of how did I go about it, I just, one, reflected on what I liked about anesthesia and the things that I loved about the specialty, and then I, two, reflected on myself and things in my life, like in and outside of medicine, to see what I wanted to convey in my personal statement. And I kind of just came up with a whole bunch of ideas and figured it out, like combined those, and like made sure that I wasn't just rehashing my resume. They already got your resume. You want your personal statement to say something different about you that you kind of didn't get to share on your application elsewhere. So I just tried to focus and make sure that I was doing that.
And I think the most important thing you can do is get a lot of people to review it. People you trust or people who have the experience. I sent mine to someone I had met at an SNMA conference, and she like destroyed it, but for the better. So, it's really important to have those people look it over, people who are in places that you want to be. I also had a fellow from Penn look over mine. He gave me a lot of great feedback. So make sure that makes its way around, and don't be afraid of the criticism either. It's all constructive. It's there for you to, to help you.
I completely agree with having multiple people look at it and not being afraid. I definitely, one of the people that I had look at my personal statement was actually someone from, I don't know if you guys are familiar with YBAD. It's a group on Facebook, Young Black American Doctors. But I had never met this person, but they had said they were willing to be an anesthesia mentor. So I sent them my personal statement and they were very helpful as well. So I would say don't be afraid to reach out if you're looking for a second eye. It doesn't necessarily have to be, someone that you think maybe nice or whatever it is. You just want someone that ideally is in the field or that would be able to give a different perspective than what you currently have. And don't be afraid of starting it later. I started mine in end of June, and I did that intentionally just because I had more rotations in anesthesia. I had a pain month in May, and then I had a cardiac ICU rotation in June. So I wanted to get more experience so I could maybe have something more to talk about than just my anesthesia rotation from third year, and that worked out fine.
Yes, and I do agree. YBAD is the plug. So YBAD. You can type in there, like find a mentor, you can find them or anything. I mean, everyone's really about it and about helping each other there. So
cool. Thank you guys. Just the last question is, what has been a high moment other than, I guess, kind of match day, even though also still kind of slightly questionable, but what has been a high moment throughout your journey in medical school?
I mean, besides match day?
That's what comes to mind right now.
Okay. I mean,
I guess completing all of the steps.
You said what?
After finishing getting my results for step 2 CS, completing all the board exams for med school, having all of those over, that felt good to know that I didn't have to do another one. So I guess that was a high to know you made it and you successfully passed all of the board exams in med school.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. I guess the high for me was actually getting my repeat step 2 CS score in January, because I was like, all right, it's a done deal. I ain't got to worry about this. Because I was like, listen, if I don't pass this, I can't get ranked. So that's a problem. So yeah, that was I actually cried when I got that score. I was like, all right. As soon as I got the score, I clicked submit on my rank list and I was done.
Hey.
I think focusing on the little things too. So the first time I delivered a baby by myself, that was cool.
By yourself?
Yeah. Make sure the head is turned the right way. But yeah, the little things, the little day-to-day things that kind of keep you going and, remind you why you got into the general field of medicine. It doesn't have to be, your particular specialty, but, your first successful intubation or video intubation or, your first big IV, those things, pay attention to those moments.
Going along with that in the little moments, I think having, when you have just certain patients that look like you, or just Black patients that just pull you to the side and tell you how proud they are of you, they don't even know you, but those moments always feel good.
So ancillary staff,
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, word, I'll study extra,
and I feel like it's like a code, when we're walking down the hall with your white coat and you don't even say nothing, with the staff, and they're just looking at you that feels good.
It's all worth it.
Yeah.
But for me, I think what was just my last shelf exam, which I was done with my boards in August, all of them. And so in October, that was the very last meaningful score, or whatever, which was the shelf. It was in October. I think that weekend it was a party because I'm actually done. Right now, I'm just have to get match. I mean, that's a big thing. But I just felt oh my God, the worst part for me was always this testing. And at that moment, I realized I'm done. Now I can actually, go to the hospital, enjoy my patient, talk to them, take care of them without the burden of, I need to, at the end of this rotation, you have to take this test and you better pass it, So I think for me, that was a really great moment to just be done. So.
Yeah, I think that's part of what made retaking CS so tough mentally.
Yeah.
Because I was checked out. When I took it in August. I was so checked out. I was like, yo, it's my last test. I'm just going to go through these rotations, and then you get the result, and you're like, dang, I gotta reprogram,
Yeah.
But hey, look at you right now.
Look at y'all right now. Oh, he do it. Yo, I'm so grateful. Do you guys have anything to plug, like social media, any projects that you've got going on? If you mentor,
Yeah.
that's how we're gonna.
Personally, I do mentor. I don't have anything official, but it's kind of part of my long-term goal is to just either start it myself or just be part of like a mentorship program. But I do mentor, especially being that I was a high school teacher at some point. I still have my student that I still mentor. So I'm always open for mentorship. I mean, between social media, email, I'm pretty sure you guys will put that information somewhere. I'm always willing to talk to someone if they have any question. I think it's probably the same for you guys, but I'm hoping.
Yeah, agreed. Always happy to help whoever. Find me on Instagram. I'm Black Girl White Coat. No underscores. There's 2 of us out there. But Black Girl White Coat. So just hit me up on Instagram. I answer all my DMs. Call me on the phone. Whatever.
Okay, you can hit me up on Instagram, but I also actually blog. I've been blogging since 2014. You can find my blog at curveballsandmedschool.com, and I've been kind of blogging my experience before med school, through med school on that site. So you can check out some tips there, and I've featured like med students on there as well. So you can get all kinds of inspiration on the website.
Cool. I didn't know that. I'm gonna check that out too. I'm just literally just looking it up right now. Focus. Okay. Thank you guys so much. I don't know, does anyone else have anything else to add? Nelson, I feel like you're saying things, but I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I just said thank you.
Okay. Yay. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
For having us.
For real. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Magic. Yeah. Be sure to check out for our audience. We're gonna have our last and final session on Thursday at 3 p.m. CST. We're gonna have some of the YouTubers that you guys know and love come through, and we're gonna reflect on our medical school journey so far.
I'm checking that out.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Show up. Hey. But yeah. Oh wait, Nelson, you have what?
I'm out on delay or something.
No, go ahead.
I think I have weak speakers. My Bluetooth wasn't working, but I was saying thank y'all, everybody who's tuning in from home. Thank y'all for spending the time. We really appreciate it. Also, shout out to Mom. She's always supporting. Mom's literally watching right now, so Mama D.
Thank you, Auntie.
Yeah, I don't know if my aunt was still on, but they were like texting me the whole time. So,
So thank y'all.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right, we're gonna stop this stream, but see you guys later. Stay safe. All that good stuff.
Thank you.
Bye.
All that good stuff. See y'all later.
Mm-hmm.